Hello, and welcome to The Big Twist, where we talk to industry creatives about the biggest plot twists they have encountered in their lives thus far, setting them on the path they are on today. My name is Anna Carini.
And I'm Angela Trevino, and we're super excited to have Detra Hicks with us today. She's a good friend of mine. We work together on Sacrifice for BT. So she's both a TV writer and a lawyer.
Yes, I wish I was just a TV writer and not a lawyer.
And we're so excited to have you. So why don't we kick it off by talking about how we're doing? Like, how's life for you right now?
Yes. Life for me right now, post Tuesday, is hard. Much harder than I would have expected. I'm not one who holds a lot of hope in things being like great or changing for the better, because I'm from the South and I'm just used to seeing things very plainly. But I think I had a lot of hope, a lot more hope than I knew I had. And so, because in my mind, it was just so clear what was going to happen.
And just to give listeners context, what happened? So
Tuesday,
yes,
we're
recording
post-election.
Post-election.
We're the same week into the week. I've gotten out of my bed, so that's good. And I'm being slightly dramatic, but only that much, because it was hard for me. It felt like such a clear choice, such a clear distinction between what was right and what was demonstrably not.
Agreed.
And I'm a military brat, so I'm a big patriot. Like, I think, yes, I love this democracy. And as a lawyer, I really think what we have as a system, it's so precious. Mm-hmm. And it is an experiment. And we've got to do right by the experiment for it to do right by us. Mm-hmm. And I love history. So seeing what has happened in history and how so many things we were looking at looked like they were in relation to that, I was like, oh, it's so clear. We know what's going to happen next. It's just because I love this place. We're going to do right by it. And now we're here.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too political on this podcast, because that's not our focus, but I feel like that's important to address. I think a lot of us that live in liberal bubbles, right? So whether it be Atlanta, a very liberal city in an otherwise conservative state, right? Or whether it be Los Angeles, like sometimes our perception of what the country ethos is might not actually be indicative of what's going on. And so I remember feeling the same way the last election, where it was just like, where did this come from, right? Like not the Biden one, but where Trump got elected, just this idea of like, we need to understand the ethos of people that are in a totally completely different circumstance and that are being told different things.
Yes.
And and where do we go from here, right? Like, how do we bridge that disconnect between our version of reality and their version of reality?
Yeah, I certainly think there's something to that. I know for me, because very few people in my life are in the bubble, because my family's in Middle Georgia, but my other family's in Texas. Like, I don't get the luxury of the bubble, So I've always felt like I was very sort of aware of how everything outside of our world in the entertainment industry. I was like, oh, okay, that's how they feel. That's what they're interested in, which is what we need for writing anyway. Mm-hmm. So I've always been very interested in that. Even with that, was still so caught off guard.
Yeah. No, I'm not. And you have the Southern connection. And hearing you say that. And also, just for the record, even though we may not have a political podcast, I really appreciate speaking to the moment that we're in and how we're feeling. And I personally feel everything is politics. So even if this isn't a political podcast.
Really good point.
It is. Yeah. So in one way or another, that's my personal feeling. But yeah, I'd love to tap into that a little more of this, like this Southern connection. And well, I was going to ask, like, I'm very interested in not being in the bubble and still feeling so confident. If we want to keep going down,
why don't we explore that for a little bit?
Okay,
100%.
Because I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, I mean, look,
it's important to talk about. Yeah,
I think so, because again, as writers, so much, as actors, even so much of what we do, our experience is about creating, embodying something outside of ourselves, something that someone can connect to. Right? When we write, our goal is for me anyway, if I can change just somebody's mind, like Baldwin said, then I have done something to change the world. If I can make somebody feel included, if I can make somebody feel seen, then I've done something right, which means I have to be aware of how everybody else in the world is sort of seeing themselves and, different plights people have. People who are mothers see things through the lens of being a mother. People who are not mothers, who wish to be mothers, they see things through the lens of what it's like to, if they could be a mother, or, what they want to be. Like, everyone's got a different experience, and they can be sitting right next to each other. Like my best friends and I, 2 have kids, 2 don't. I think out of the 2 who don't, I may be the only one who's like, yeah, but I could really do for some kids. So I see my perspective sitting next to them it includes them, obviously, because I love them and I adore their children so much. So it's like I have to be very conscious of what their experience is while also living mine. And I feel like that's just what is on a micro level, what we all have to do, certainly as creatives. So yeah, you don't get to live in a bubble, certainly if you're trying to create and speak to the masses. So I've always kind of felt like, yeah, I'm especially considering my family that I love so dearly, that is not anywhere close to this bubble. To see my family is to go down dirt roads and go down streets named after you because they're in the place we've always been. So I don't really get the luxury of the bubble.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I recently talked to my brother about this election. He lives in Florida. He was one of the conservative Latino men that, was siding with the Republican view.
So interested.
And it had to do with his conservative values as it pertains to something in particular, which is transgender rights or being taught about transgender issues, being taught about that in public schools, right? Like for him, that's a big issue because for him, it's this idea of like, well, I have these beautiful 2 little girls and I don't want them thinking about transitioning, at the age of 9 years old or whatever. And it's to me, it speaks to the fear mongering that I think has been happening. And, I think both sides can sometimes be to blame where you just kind of like demonize the other perspective, right? So like what he has been exposed to is this idea of like, well, in these liberal states and in California, they're teaching kids at the age of 9 years old that they should be transitioning, which is, of course, it's absolutely ludicrous, right? But it's just this idea of like, that's his one issue, right? And so anyway, we had this like very interesting conversation, went back and forth a lot. I was like, well, here's this and here's that. And look at this article and look at that article. And then at the end of it, I don't think we changed either of our minds. But at the end of it, it was like, hey, we haven't spoken this much in a long time. Like this is the most we've ever texted.
Wow.
And I feel like I think that it left me feeling a little bit of hope in that even if we can't agree, if we have very fundamentally different versions of reality, we can still get along as people and we can still love each other and we can still like find common ground because in that conversation, there were things that we agreed about, and then you end up discovering like, well, you're just being fed like a totally different version of reality. It goes back to that for me. And like how do we come into that conversation without talking down to each other? Right.
Yeah. Which I think is really interesting because as artists, we have to do it that way. We have to be able to approach it without talking down to a person because what we have to be able to do is speak to an experience. If we are talking down to people when we write something, when we create anything, when we're portraying anything, it's not authentic. It doesn't connect. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, people got to pay to see it, right? They're not going to pay to see somebody talking down to them,
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And it doesn't change somebody's mind. The moment that you come at it from this righteous perspective of like, I am right, you're wrong, and here's all the reasons why you are wrong, they're going to shut down. They're going to be like, well, then basically you're saying I'm a total dummy, right? As opposed to coming at it from this perspective of like, let me listen to what you have to say. Let me listen to your concerns and see if I can address them in a very humble way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that might help moving forward, but it's hard because some stuff does seem very black and white.
Some stuff seems so black and white. And to your point, some stuff is just being fed to people in a way that, whether it's true or not, it's palatable, and it tastes good going down.
Yeah. That's the kicker right there.
Yeah.
It's palatable.
The one I did want to address before we move on, because I do think this is such an interesting conversation, how we view immigrants in this country. Because for me, it's been a very loaded question, right? Where my parents came to this country legally. My dad had a period of 40 days that he did not have a visa. And because of those 40 days, he was penalized and told he had to leave the country for 3 years and could not come back for 3 years. So he would have had to totally relocate his family to Mexico or basically come back and cross the border illegally, which he ended up doing. Has paid his taxes every year, basically has been an upstanding citizen, but except for this one issue, finally asked to be pardoned by the Biden administration. It took 4 years for them to say, yes, we're moving forward with pardoning you. Now you have to go to the consulate at the border. And then there they have to greenlight your pardon. But the wait right now is so long that it's going to take a whole year.
Wow.
For him to even be seen at the consulate, right?
Wow. Is this the information you just got recently? You were going to talk to him?
Yeah, exactly. So now we know, yes, the government wants to pardon him, but it's going to take a year just for the consulate to approve it because he can't even get an appointment right now because they're so backed up. So on one hand, I have a situation like what happened with my dad, and I do believe that there are so many people that have come to this country illegally that for whatever reason they fell out of status because there was a paperwork error or there was a lapse in their visa and they were just oh, let me just stay for a little longer, and all of a sudden they're viewed as criminals, right? It's that is not okay. That just, to me, the punishment does not fit the quote unquote crime.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, right, you have a whole swath of Latinos or just people in general that have immigrated to this country legally. And then they're like, well, why did I have to jump through all these hoops, right? When there's someone that is coming in illegal. So that is such a complex issue, right? And it tears apart families. And I just feel like that's indicative of the kind of topic where we do have to come to the table with kind of an open mind and then hear both sides.
Yes.
I just wanted to get both of you all's perspective because I've dealt with it on very a personal note, right? But both of you are not immigrants, so I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it.
You want to go first?
I don't actually.
Okay.
Because I don't feel it's my thing to speak to. I try to be very conscious of that. Obviously I'm in favor of immigrants coming to this country. That's what we're going to get into a real big conversation if we start going down this line. And I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves right now is do we want to go this route, or is there a way?
I would say let's pivot it back.
Yeah,
what pivot it back?
Well, I think
scratch a little deeper on this.
Because I'm going to start with what this country was built on. And we're bringing Africans from slave labor, and we're built on that, and that's not an immigrant because that was stolen people. So that's not even. So
and I think we can put all of it together, right? Because I think when we talk about it in this, when we miss the nuance, which is all of those things, which is the dichotomy you just described between legal versus illegal. When you talk about those things, you have to have in that conversation the totality of what America is. Because what America truly is, what makes it so remarkable, is that it is a place that people fled to. Some of us came and we weren't free, Some of us came and we're the product of people who weren't free and were free. You know, some people were here and then they were made to be not free. You know, like there's just so many things that make this place what it is. But that's also what makes it so friggin' amazing. You know, we have to be able to have the conversation nuanced, and we have to be able to talk about all of it. And I think, again, art, writing, talking about it, portraying the experience, it brings life to it, because maybe conversations you can't have with a brother or a sibling or anyone, a friend, if you see it on the screen, you can go, oh, okay, now I get it a little bit more.
Yes.
Know?
Yeah. I love that. And I love what you said about like not shying away from these difficult conversations, right? Like that is the whole point of art. Yeah.
I don't see what you get from shying away from it. Look, I am one of those people who's notorious for not saying everything that's on their mind, because like so much of what's on my mind shouldn't come out. And I know that about me. I learned that very early on. But I do think hard conversations are really important. And when we don't know how to have hard conversations with respect, with consideration, with love, you know, I think that's where things get real dicey. Real
love
dicey.
that.
So
yeah,
that's a great response. How do you? We already got me. Yeah. By the way, they're already going.
So we have a running theme now in this podcast.
It happens.
I love this about Anna, that like I do think that you have such a not sensitive soul, but you feel what the other person is saying to you, right? And you truly take it in. I feel like
it's lost me jobs. I've had directors look at me and say, "You're too emotionally available," and I have had that happen. But I need to learn to keep it in a little more.
No, just channel it, darling. Channel it.
No, I love this, but it was what you said about that you love all of that what this country is. And that's, I mean, I've also had, obviously, I think I can be clear and say I've had a very hard week as well. And I think many of us have. And so that you speaking to, we have to look at, when we're having these hard conversations, we have to look at what the whole country is and how we started, and that we were a place people fled to. That is such a beautiful description to apply to this conversation of immigration. And it got me. It just got me. And I'm curious, like, how you are taking care of yourself, if I may ask that, or how you're trying to move forward, if you are. Or the question is just maybe, where are you right now? 4 or 5 days after. What's today? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days after.
I got up.
You got up. That's where we started.
I worked. I helped people, you know.
Yes.
I have avoided very difficult conversations. I may have been way too honest with a couple of people at work. We'll see how that comes back on me. Hopefully by then, if it does fall out poorly, I have a new staff writing job somewhere. So I can be like, that's okay. I can leave now. I don't know if I can say that I'm taking care of myself at this point. I need to, you know, I got my workouts in, and, you know, I've gone grocery shopping now. I got food. But there were a couple days where I was like, I don't care if I have food. You know, it just, this feels antithetical to everything I ever understood about what this place is supposed to be and what it takes to achieve things. You know, I am the product of, you know, I'm not first generation to the country, but I am first generation middle class in my family. You know, I watched my parents go from, my dad had no running water, you know, a house with no bathroom, too poor for an outhouse. My mom grew up on the west side of Chicago. Like, and we didn't come from a lot of wealth. You know, we didn't come from means. And my dad went to college at 15, you know. Both parents are multi-degreed. Like, these people have bust their butts. And it's my understanding that that kind of work, that kind of ethics, like, it allows you to have and achieve. Like, if you are demonstrably the better candidate because you have worked really hard, and you have solutions to help the people around you or the company you're going to, for example, then that makes you added value, and that gets you the job. So, I had a very hard time watching this week and thinking, well, that challenges all of that, doesn't it? You know, I mean, it sounds naive, I guess, especially coming from me because I am very much like, I don't think I'm a very optimistic person, but I always thought that's your baseline. Just do the work. If you just do the work and you set yourself up for success, it's going to happen.
It's not naive. The other candidate's a convicted felon.
Okay.
It's not naive at all. So,
you know?
I mean, it's just like, yeah, how are we here?
Right. So, yeah, it's been a week. I think that I spent the first couple of days just dealing with challenges to my worldview. And I hate saying that. If my dad hears this, he's going to be like, I taught you better than that. So, yeah, sorry, Daddy. But those were the first couple of days. Then after that, it was kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to give myself the rest of this week, but, you know, we got stuff to do. So I think working out and going grocery shopping and then doing this, these are the things that I'm doing to heal myself.
I was definitely clinging on to this. I was like, I'm looking forward to talking to you.
I know. I'm so grateful. We're so grateful you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's talk a little more about I'm so curious about your philosophy as a writer, and you've gotten into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And like, can we talk a little more about your work and what you've done or what you're into?
I love drama writing.
Okay.
Let's see. I I started as a playwright because I got a BFA in acting, and you know, my 20s were weird. My 20s were really weird. A lot of people got to like go be 20, and I was taking care of people. I was in a relationship with someone. He got sick. I took care of him. My grandmother got sick. I took care of her. So I did that for most of my 20s and in my 30s. And when my grandmother passed, I felt very unmoored. I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of sat there. I remember going to write my first check after she passed, and I wrote it to her apartment complex. And I was like, oh God, this is going to take some getting used to. So I was just sitting here in LA, actually, and I was thinking, what do I do next? And my dad calls, and, you know, I graduated from law school the year before. And he said, so you know, what are you doing out there? You just working at that nonprofit? I was like, yeah. You're not going to use that law degree? I was like, well, I mean, what's the question, Dad? You know, like, what are you trying to get here?
What's the real question?
Like, what are you like? I'm just wondering what you're going to do with your time. I mean, you just going to sit out there on your ass? I just don't understand. So, you know, I told him, I was like, well, I'm writing a play. You know, I'm doing that. Well, I don't see it. I don't see it. So God bless him and his really ridiculous way of parenting. It motivated me to go and start writing. And so I started writing plays. And my best friend and I, we decided to produce plays and direct plays. And we had some people come out and see the plays. And when they came out, my stepmother, actually, she's really good friends with the showrunner who she brought to the show. And I had no idea what a showrunner was. Like, I came out here to act. I didn't come out here to write. So I was like, and I wasn't acting. I was in a completely different area of life. And I just didn't know enough about the business. So she said showrunner. I was like, cool. That's cool. I don't really know what that means. And so he comes and he sees the show and he talks to me afterwards. He's like, have you thought about writing for TV? I was like, no. Like, I had a whole plan I had started to think about for theater. Because that's what I had a BFA in acting. I was trained in theater. That's what I did. That's what I knew. And he said, you should start writing for TV. I was like, how do I do that? And he still tells me a couple of things. And I said, all right, well, I've never seen a television script really, except for like auditions, sides. So I thought, all right, well, I'll figure this out. So I just started looking. I just started going and finding scripts everywhere I could. I started watching TV and dissecting it based on the scripts. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. And so I just started writing stuff. And I remember sending him my first TV script. And he was like, this is a play. I need you to write something for TV. I was like, no, that's not what that is. You know? So we had to do a lot of learning. And so then I started applying to fellowships. And, you know, it was really, really, really stressful because I kept getting like right there at the edge, like right there at the end. And I think the one that got me was when I was right at the edge of HBO's fellowship. You know, I'm there in the finals. You know, and I'm like, this is great. I go and I do my pitch at HBO and I'm in the room and I'm talking and I walked out of there. I was like, okay, this might actually be happening. doesn't happen. And I'm like, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now what?
You have so many close calls in this industry. Just a given.
That's it. You know, you have to know that you're going to have so many close calls. And when I finally got my first staff writing job, it wasn't because I had an agent or a manager. It wasn't because somebody walked me into anything. I had a friend, God bless Rachel. She says to me, look, I'm going to have you start coming to the Writers Guild Black Writers meetings. And I was like, I guess. I mean, at this point, it was COVID, so everything was still online. It was towards the tail end of like the first year and a half. And I said, I guess, that's fine. She invites me to a meeting. I'm sitting on the couch, and I just wasn't going to go. I was just depressed. I was like, it's over. It's not going to happen. Because I had just had another near miss. This was for Sony's fellowship. And I was like, I give up. I'm not going to keep trying this. It's clear it's not going to work. I'll just continue working with these athletes as a lawyer. It's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. So she said, you're not in the meeting. And I said, no. And she said, are you coming? I was like, well, she said, put your bra on, join the meeting.
I like that. Put your bra on, join the meeting.
I looked at David, my boyfriend. I was like, should I? He's like, get in the meeting. So I get in the meeting. And she says, now introduce yourself. I'm like, now that's a bridge too far. Why you got me talking? I don't know these people. And she said, just say something. So I introduced myself. And then maybe 2 days later, I got a message from Kevin, I got an email that said Kevin was looking for me. And I was like, huh?
And what are the odds?
And so I started talking to our showrunner for the show that we worked on. The show that she and I worked on. I get on the phone with him. He said, send me some stuff. And I'm like, this ain't gonna happen. It's just another near miss. You know, I'd finally gotten my mind right. You know, I'm just gonna be a lawyer now. And he said, so yeah, I think I'm gonna bring you on. And I was like, huh? I don't know what that means. What are you saying? I get to write for TV now? So I walked out of the room and I looked at David. I was like, I got a job. He was like,
I love that story.
That's good, babe. That's good. Can we go eat now? I was like,
you're like, you don't understand how difficult this is.
You have no idea.
You don't just go eat afterwards.
He was like, no, it's good. It's good. I just
have
want
some champagne.
No, I was like, I just want some barbecue before it closes.
That's all he cared about. His mind was on the barbecue.
So he's got a skinny man stomach. That's all it was. That's all it was. So yeah, that was my first staff writing job. And then we had the strike maybe 9 months after we wrapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now I'm waiting for job number 2 and doing a lot of stuff. The one thing that really I walked away from it with, really nice relationships with people that I just came to love. And
I love that.
Yeah, like people you want to keep in touch with. Like
That's
when you
great.
haven't talked to them the other day.
It was a really good room.
Yeah, it was such a good room.
Oh,
it was a
great.
really good room. And two of our producers have been wonderful in how they've mentored and allowed me to pester them. If I don't pester them, they're like, where are you? And one has allowed me to work with her on things as she's developing them. So I'm getting a lot of experience and understanding and development. Like, what does it take to develop a show and write the pilot and, pitch the pilot to your other friends that are showrunners. And, I get to be in the room creating the board, just ways to continue to develop the craft and stay in communication with people. So just finding ways to keep that muscle moving and stay creative while the industry is doing whatever it's doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're just starting to jump in and you're finally in, when things happen like what happened with us with the strike, it can be again, it's like a lot of starts and stops, near misses. You're like, oh, and keeping in perspective that it's different because you're actually in. I remember talking to a showrunner who was helping me prepare for the HBO pitch. And he said, look, the thing that you need to know now, you didn't get that, fine. But you're finally in the stadium. You're not outside trying to get in the game. You're inside the stadium, He said, you get your first job, you're in the game. You may sit on the bench off and on, but you're in the game. And I was like, yeah.
That's a great analogy.
That feels like a great reminder, too, for writers and for all of us, especially. Because you had said just a second ago, we're in a pause. And I'm really thinking about that. That's interesting. It's an interesting way to look at this moment right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were chosen. You're in the team.
Right.
You're just in timeout for the time being, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that all of the accomplishments you've made up until this point have been nullified by the fact that you are currently maybe not working in a writer's room.
Yeah. And then just finding other things to do right now to keep, like I said, keep it going, you know, having the fortune of working with some of those people to work and develop some of the stuff with them, like be in the room as they're making these pitches, you know, seeing what that is like when you're pitching to the major networks and major studios. And, you know, that's a journey, you know, being a part of creating your pitch deck for this. You know, what I would have done versus what I watched these people do. I'm like, oh, that's in the game. That's the big leagues. Okay.
That's really cool.
It was amazing to just watch, you know, and just learn. Even if all I'm doing is hitting the button to get to the next slide. It was just to be in the room.
It's eye-opening, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a class on pitching, and then afterwards there were 2 or 3 showrunners. There was 3 showrunners that did a talk at the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, and they actually did the pitches for us that ended up being made into shows. Like the showrunner of like Gordita Chronicles did her pitch to us, and I could so clearly see after that what makes a winning pitch.
Yep.
Because they all had the same formula, but it was something where it was hard to quantify for me until I saw those pitches. Then it was like, oh, wow, there's so many similarities and here's what they are, you know? Sense. So I think watching and learning from people that are at the top of their game, like, can teach you so much.
Yeah, it teaches you so much about what to do, how to do it, and also about how to pay it forward. You know, because them allowing me that time, that space, that access, that's not necessary.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
that's not necessary.
I'm really sitting with. I love that.
Yeah, that's just them paying it forward. So,
and especially because I feel like we don't hear these stories a lot.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of like bad rooms and people not doing that. So I just love that you are giving this perspective.
Yeah, we had a great room. I loved our room. Like we had fun. We laughed.
Laughing is good.
We laughed. I mean, and it was virtual.
I like to laugh.
So that was harder, I think, than being in person. But man, we had a good time.
Yeah,
that's great.
We had a good time.
But I'm curious if you have a story that might encompass you a little. Tell the listeners a little bit about who you are through just a story about you.
I can hear my dad in my head right now. So that's why I'm struggling, because I don't want to put his version of me out there, because his version of me had 2 6s behind my ear and he caught me just in time. So I was mischievous. So I was very precocious. I read all the time. I wrote just because I liked stories. If you left me alone too long, things happened. I wasn't trying to create mayhem.
I love that. If you left me alone too long, things happen.
Which is so interesting because you're such a responsible adult. I would have never thought.
I got it all out the way. Got it all out the way, okay? It was all done. I don't have it in me anymore. It's all on the floor. I think the best story maybe would be we had just moved. Yes. Okay. We had just moved to Georgia. We were military, so we lived a little bit everywhere. And my mom and I had gone to Georgia, and my dad stayed in Texas. And I was used to moving every 2.5 years. Wow. I enjoyed it. I liked seeing the world. I liked the authentic way I got to be in a space. I enjoyed just like, I got to be me. And because I knew I wasn't going to stay anywhere too long, I didn't have to like fit in with anyone. So I was just like, yeah, it's me. I get to be who I am. I'm out of here in like 90 days. So let me tell you what I really think of you. You know, I got to be very much myself.
There's that honesty, right?
And that's why I had to learn not to say everything I was thinking.
It also sounds kind of liberating.
Oh, it was until we got
you could just burn bridges. It's like, that's okay.
I won't be back.
To another town.
Yeah.
I sort of love this way of
living.
It was
amazing. Until I found out we weren't moving. And I was like, oops. Like I came in the kitchen. I forget what I had done that day at school, but I had done something where I was like, yep, that's burnt down. I think we're good. I came home. I was like, so where are we going next? She was like, this is it. And I said, what you mean? And she said, this is it. We're not going anywhere else. I was like, you don't know what I just did today. I pissed everybody off. And she's like, well, you have to figure it out. I called my dad. I said, this is it for real? He's like, yeah, I'm out of the military. He was a lawyer at that point. I was like, oh. So I had to figure out how to like start being a part of, I had already burnt the bridges. So that wasn't there was no rebuilding. But I also felt really very free and very much uniquely myself. And so that's when I started trying to do things I wanted to do, like things I wanted to see. So at that time, it was Georgia in, the late 90s. So I was in middle school and I wanted to hear some Black history stuff in February. There was nothing about Black history. And I was like, this isn't cool. And so I said, all right, I got an initiative. I told my mom I'm going to go. I talked to the teacher. I said, I want to develop, and this is the story. I was like, I want to do Black history. And I want like it's the month of February. We only have so many days. Y'all gave us the shortest month. My mom's like, stay focused. I was like, okay, right. Because like, I'm giving her the pitch. I'm giving my mom, this is the pitch. I'm going to the teacher. This is what I'm going to say. Because I already gone to the teacher, said I want to do it. She said, come up with a pitch. And I was like, all right, cool. So I go home and I'm practicing the pitch. My mom's like, no, you can't call them ignorant. You can't call them ignorant. I was like, but they are. And she was like, yeah, but nobody wants to hear that, Detra. And I was like, oh.
It goes back to what we were
talking about before.
Full circle. Yes.
Full circle.
Nobody wants to hear.
Nobody wants to hear that they're a dummy. Like, like no one wants to hear that they just are so ignorant to everything, And so that I think is the perfect story to tell you, like, how I temper some of my worst angels and my better angels prevail. Because that kid, my little version, she had this really good idea and she wasn't wrong. And in the truest sense of ignorance, meaning not knowing something, she was right. But if she wanted to accomplish a thing, she couldn't say it like that,
Oh, is that a lesson?
She had to temper it. God. So that, I think...
And that stuck with you.
Yes. That was
honestly,
that was one of those core moments, You talk about core memories, talk about core shifts, like core lessons. That was one of those lessons that I learned that I was like, there is a way to do this that gets you what you want versus just, bull and china shopping everything.
I need to spend more time with you.
Let's do it.
I need to learn and glean because I don't know if I've learned that lesson fully yet. It is a superpower.
It feels like a superpower.
Yeah.
Like I think like I equated to one of the things I want to bring up is this idea of like the best showrunners, the way that they deal with executives and notes that executives give is very different than those, bulls in a china shop that just how you take a note, right? Like to be like, wow, that's a really good point. Have you thought about it this way? Like, could you consider like this alternative? But let me simmer on that. Let me think about it and get back to you versus like, that's a horrible idea.
Right.
Like, I think being diplomatic is a skill set that will serve you no matter what profession you're in. But I think especially for creatives, like being diplomatic can be really difficult for us because we feel so much. We're so passionate and we're so like, we want to change the world in so many ways, right? And it's like, but you have to find a way to say it in a way that
And I think so much of what we do, inclusive, exactly. And so much of what we do, we're pouring ourselves into it in a way that doesn't necessarily happen. Like as a lawyer, I'm not pouring myself into admissions. I'm not pouring myself into interrogatories. They're facts. I get to make sure that the facts on the page, are what are true, but I don't even really get to play around with them. They're just facts. When we are creating, we are putting ourselves into everything, whether we're acting, whether we're writing. It's something about that is so unique and raw. Like I think about artists, especially I think about Black artists who are extraordinary, Billie Holiday, Coltrane. I think about these people and how addiction was so common at the time. Yeah, it was a party thing. Yeah, it was recreational, but it was also a way to sort of mute the outside influences that told you that the thing you were doing that was your very nature, your art, wasn't enough, right? So when we're writing, when we're pouring ourselves into something, we need diplomacy for sure. We need to be diplomatic. We need to be able to receive something. But it's hard. It's super hard. But I think where it serves us most is not necessarily in the notes we get, because we're going to get a note and go home and be like, that's some bullshit. Like that's going to happen. But I think it serves us most in how we create, because if you can write a character that you don't like.
That you don't agree with, 100%. Yeah.
If you can, somebody that you don't like, but when you put them on the page, there's something redeeming about them. There's something about them that serves that character. There's something that serves the story. It's the same thing. It just looks a little different. It's that same mentality. Like, you can't look at everything and just bull and china shop it. Like, yeah, I think that the woman who behaves that way is disgusting.
Because then it becomes preachy, right? And I think that's a problem with some of art, right? Sometimes it seems so one-sided that it feels like propaganda. Yeah. And nobody wants to be fed propaganda. No. Like, you want to be fed a dialectic, like opposite.
That's great.
That's one of the things that I focus on in my work. It's like, let's present an idea and then flip it on its head. And this is another character that believes the total opposite. Yep. And yet they have so much in common, right? Yep. And it's like, where do they find common ground and like actually discover that they're more alike than they think they are? So there's something very interesting about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's truth in all of it. Look, I am not one of those people that says you should live your truth. I'm like, that's your feelings. That's not a truth. That's just your feelings. Talk about your feelings. I get it. Live your feelings, but don't call it truth. It's truthfully how you feel. However, I think in everybody's feelings, there's some level of truth that is universal. Like, I punch you in your leg. That's going to truthfully hurt. It hurts. That's you feeling it. I'm not feeling it. What I feel is what my hand felt when it hit you. I feel something different than you. You feel something different than me. But truthfully, it hurt. Yeah. There was a feeling attached to it. I think there's truth in every feeling.
That's really profound. There's sometimes like much more authenticity and honesty when we talk about how we feel versus talking about like, well, this is how the world is. Right. Like, whenever we get to like, this is the truth with a capital T. Right. We're actually moving away from the thing that is most like authentic, or like the thing that we can actually best describe, which is our feelings.
Well, yeah, because really, if we think about truth, it is binary. Either a thing is or it isn't. And so very few things are binary. Like, so few things are binary. There are some absolute truths. You need to pay your taxes. That's the truth.
Taxes.
They will come and get you. You know what I'm saying? And like, being audited sucks. Happened once. I'll never, ever do it. Ever. I was like, I didn't know. This is my first time ever making any money. I was in my early 20s. I was like, what? I'm traumatized to go to the mailbox to this day. Oh no. IRS is a truth. Okay.
IRS is the truth. You take nothing else from this. The
IRS is the truth. Okay. So like, that's a truth. But sometimes even race sometimes isn't exactly a truth. Like, I look at my background, I look at my partner's background. We're Black. That's our experience. But our Blackness is mixed up with a whole lot of other things. You know what I mean? It's not binary. Our existence is one thing. Our truth of how we see ourselves in the world, how we live in the world, that's something that is true. That is one thing. But what we're made up of, like, I don't wear green on St. Patrick's Day because my great grandfather was Irish. I don't need to. It's in my blood. That's how that's what I talk to people about. You don't know that when you look at me. That's not my experience. I don't walk around in the world like that. But I don't know. It's just illustrative of that thought. There's very few things that are binary. So when we create, if we can approach our writing, and that's how I like to think about my writing, if I can approach my writing with that in mind when I'm developing my characters, of course the stories are going to go all over the place. But if the characters, which is my goal is always character driven. If
your acting background.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Because I want it to be something that actors want to do. Yep. Like, I write stuff that I would want to act in. If that character gets to have that scene and I'm acting it out as I type it and I'm like, oh God, that's great. Then I've won. But it has to be about a character that's got as many layers as I can possibly think of. Like, as many layers that it can exist in one person as possible, because very few things are just this or that.
I love that, Detra. Can we dive a little bit deeper into what you're interested in right now, like intellectually, or what are some of the other themes in your work? Or is there a script right now that you're writing that you're super excited about?
I have a story that I have been playing with for a while that I just, I keep coming back to it. There's two of them. There's two different stories. I think the universal notion behind all of it, though, all the stuff I love inside of everything that I love, is these are people who are in the world trying to figure out how they belong to it, because they know how desperately they want to impact it, but they don't exactly know how to do that when they don't know how they fit in it, one way or another. So whether it's through the family dynamic or whether it's because they have no family, always for everybody, I want to see them figure out how they can exist in the world so that they can contribute to it. Because ultimately, that's what I want to do, is I want to contribute to the world. But the stories that I keep going back to, they are really about these people who are trying so hard to understand, why are they here? What are they supposed to be doing? Because I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's because we're older now. I don't know. But it is a question that I hear so many of my peers talking about. You've accomplished something, but why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you had kids or you didn't, why are you here? What are we supposed to be doing? And for a lot of people the answer to that lived in religion. But so many people aren't connected to a faith anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bigger question now, I think, than ever in my childhood. I listened to people around me that was just never a question.
What is your meaning?
I love
what is your
that.
purpose?
Yeah.
Kinda.
It's about characters finding their sense of purpose
Yeah.
or trying to. Yeah, I often find myself in that feeling of, I think I am so selfish, right? It's like, I don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
I have made that choice partially because I wanted to focus on my art.
Right.
And so then I think a lot of us, especially, when it boils down to what is your purpose? My purpose is to bring art into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, but what are you trying to say with that art? Right? It's almost like it has to be a twofold thing, right? Like, as an artist, do you just exist for the purpose of creating art?
Right.
Or as an artist, do you exist for the purpose of imbuing meaning or trying to find meaning in life or trying to have something to say, right? And ultimately, I think a lot of us want to fall in that second camp of we have something we want to say,
right?
But we want to say it in a non-preachy way. We want to not be so black and white about, It's like I think there's something interesting about that, the search of the artist, trying to find their purpose, and how that in itself is well, everyone's trying to, and it's so universal, right? It's like all of our characters are doing the same thing, whether you're a bank robber or a nurse, helping people, curing people because that's her life purpose.
Right. What are we supposed to be doing? We've got this thing that is a gift, our existence. I truly believe it is. And what are we supposed to do with it? I love my family. I am a absolute nerd for my family, and my friends are basically my family. So, call me, what do you need? In some ways, I know that that's why I'm here. It's a part of it anyway. But what else? Because the world is big and there's a lot of life to live. What are the things that I can be doing? And when it comes to art, what is art? I stopped acting because I felt like I was being so selfish to worry about my feelings, what I was doing. And then it occurred to me one day, I thought, but that part's selfish, but that's not how you should have been thinking about it to begin with. You should have been thinking about, what is this character feeling? What is this character saying? Why is it important that it be said?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I should have been doing, but as a baby actor, I didn't think about any of that. I was like, am I in my spot? Do I look good? But I think, what is art? What are we supposed to be doing with the art? And also knowing that all of that is fluid. The answer to all of that changes depending on where we are in life, depending on what's going on in the world. I mean, really being kind enough to yourself to not think you're being selfish so much as you are just trying to figure out how to impact as Angela, the world as best Angela can impact it. And that may mean you don't have kids.
And some people have kids for selfish reasons.
That's true.
I gotta throw that in there. I'm sorry.
I know.
Sorry, not sorry.
You know,
it's
an accessory. And then when it's here, what do you do with it? So, you know.
But the reason I brought it up is because there is something to be said about so many parents derive their sense of meaning and purpose.
Well, it's a way to be immortal. I mean, it's incredible. It's so profound. That's a way to be immortal. Yeah. I think that's a lot of what this is sometimes for people. It's like, how do we keep going? What is our legacy is another question I like to sit with. Yeah. Like, what is the legacy going to be? Yeah. And that is, if you have children, that is a literal physical legacy. Yeah. You have left something behind to carry on. I don't know. I see it that way sometimes. So when you don't have that, I think there can be still such a societal and cultural pressure. We're not beyond that, of that women, this is your purpose. Yeah. And this is what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So when there's many of us saying that's not how I feel and that's not what I want to do, where do we find the resources and where do we find the support? I've found it very much among each other. Yeah. Of like, what is what I'm doing? Yeah. And knowing that what I'm doing is valid and feeling that strongly. For me, because I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm loving it and I'm just thinking so much of it about is connection for me. Yeah. So much of what I feel like I'm here for is connection and to deeply feel. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's okay.
But think about what that does to people though. If they have a person that they can connect with, you doing that's legacy. Because in a particular moment, your ability to connect with a person where they are. Once I was in the shoe store, I was in the mall in Beaufort, Georgia. I'm in the mall and I look over at this kid and I see him hang up the phone and he's just looking, just shooketh, as my niece would say. Mm. And I was like, I'm looking around. I don't really understand what's going on. There's no outside influence. It was clearly about what happened on the phone. Mm-hmm. And he's like starting to try to move, but he can't move. And I looked at him, I said, do you need a hug? Aww. And he said, yes. And so I gave him a hug. I don't touch people. Wow. I don't like touching people. I got germ issues. But in that moment, just seeing him where he was, whatever was going on, I was like, oh, okay, that's bigger than my germ issues. You need a hug. Mm-hmm. And he pulls back. He says, my grandma just died. Oh, and I was like, ooh, okay, come on, give it back. Bring it back. I hugged him a little longer. And then I left him to manage whatever comes next. But just in that moment, like if you have that ability to connect to someone, that's legacy. You leave behind for a person, if only for a second, there's like, oh, there was something that gave me a little reprieve for the day. Like,
I agree.
So I think that's huge.
I agree. And I was thinking about with the very beginning of our conversation, talking about what you were doing for yourself post-election. And you said you've been helping people. Mm. That's a big one. I love that one too. And just finding small ways. Like I've had a very strong reaction as well. And I was actually shopping in a Trader Joe's on Friday for a work happy hour. And there was this little very elderly lady, adorable, and she was trying to reach fruit on the top shelf and couldn't. And I just said, can I help you? Can I get that? Yeah. And what else do you need? Can I get you anything else? And just this small moment of her just being so appreciative and like, thank you so much. And like, it did so much for my day. Yeah. And it's just a tiny little thing, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that I think get us through.
And I think like in such a cold world, sometimes kindness can be a form of rebellion.
Oh, I agree.
So all of this stuff we're talking about reminds me of my grandmother and how when I was a little kid, she would, no matter who we passed on the street, she would say, good morning, good afternoon, God bless you. She's very religious. Mm. But literally just every stranger. And I could see their faces going from like neutral to like, oh, good morning to you too. Or like they would wave. And in this country, we don't do that as much. I think that was also like her being old school. Like, she's 92 at this point. Like she's of a different generation, right? But I think I do feel that kindness can sometimes be a form of rebellion, a form of of going against this like hyper individualistic society that tells you that your worth is strictly defined by your success and by how much money you have.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, your worth is actually coming from the love you put out there, right? And the kindness you put out there and how you make people feel.
How you make people.
I love that both of you have anecdotes about how paradoxically, right, making somebody else feel better makes you feel better, right? And makes you feel less alone.
Less alone and more like you actually are. Again, we talked about purpose. Like you're walking in something like your purpose, because I honestly think for all of us, no matter what our purpose is on a grand scale, I think at the core of it is got to be making sure that the world around us is in good shape, and making sure that when you leave a space, you leave it better than when you went in. I think all of us should consider that a part of our purpose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like grandma doing that. Hey, how are you? Good morning. That's just seeing of a person, that changes a person's moment.
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that even can be altered even just like a little bit by the fact that somebody just saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, completely.
I think there's wisdom in that. Grandma knew what she was doing.
I would love to go back a little bit and just take a scalpel to this idea of going from, being a lawyer to being a writer. Is that your big plot twist? Or have there been other big personal plot twists that we can dive into that you feel have really informed your creative life?
I don't know. I mean, I think those are a part of the plot twist that so actor to lawyer to writer, I think all of that's a part of the back to lawyer because of strike. All of that I think is a part of the bigger plot twist, which is that I come from these storytellers, like my grandmother, both my grandmothers really. My Aunt Connie, God bless her soul, that woman could tell a story. I mean, that woman would tell stories. You've never met a more stoic person than my father. But when he is throwing his hat across the room because he can't keep it together, because you are telling a story that good, that's a storyteller. So, these people, having them as my home base, especially since we were military, we lived everywhere. I feel like the biggest plot twist or the thing that made me write, the thing that made me a creative period was because I had access to so many things and so many types of people. And, I say that I have one foot in, upper middle class and one foot in other than that, lower than that, I would say, I guess, and then my head balances in between, just trying to figure out how to live in a world where my grandfathers are both felons and my parents would do nothing of the sort. Like my family life is just so different. Meanwhile, I get to fly to the NBA draft with my dad. I'm flying first class as a kid, going and learning all these things. And my grandma's never been on a plane, won't get on one. Will tell you sound like devil speaking for you to ask her to get on one. Like that's a preposterous notion for this woman. But I got to walk around barefoot and pick blackberries and go hunt for the good plums and avoid the bull in the pasture while I was also going to science camp, and I got to have all of that. And I felt like it filled me up so much, it had to go out. Mm-hmm. Like I had to create the world where people could see it. Because like, if I'm telling you this, you don't get it. But if I can create it, you can see it. And it's like, oh, okay. That's what she's talking about. Yeah, that is different. And so I think that would be my plot twist, as it were. Like living and growing up in these very distinct and unique realities, but all of it lived inside of me. And I loved all of it so much. And I just felt like I needed to put it out there.
And those are worlds that you don't get to see. It's like, I love what you're saying because it resonates so much with me. Like I'm writing a novel that takes place in my hometown in Mexico.
Right.
It's like, no, I've never seen my hometown in Mexico depicted in anything. Right. It's like, I think these super unique experiences, right? Sometimes like you start from a place of, I could never see myself writing because that's not what you're taught as a kid to. But that's precisely why you should write it, because you haven't seen that hyper unique experience depicted. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a kid like me. So my friend group is diverse. You know, growing up, I had every kind of friend you can imagine. And I was Black. My experience was a Black girl in this world with, you know, multiracial, multi-ethnic friends in these all white environments. So we, the people who were diverse in these environments, we stuck together because whether we were all the same racial or ethnic group, we were the others. So that's a wholly different experience than so many of my other friends who either went to completely white, completely Black, whatever, like their friend group was just this or just that. And all of it informed how I see the world. And I feel like when I write, I write from the perspective of a Black woman, a Black girl in the middle of it all, you know, who's touching a little bit of everything around her. And all of that makes her just more her. And that's sort of, I guess, I mean, that's the roundabout way to talk about the plot twist for me, you know? That's it. Like sitting on my grandmother's porch shelling peas, learning how to crack pecans in my hand, you know, like, and saying pecan instead of pecan, you know, like, you know, we're going to get field peas. I come home from school, auntie, I want some greens. We'll go out there and get them. Okay, you know, go outside and cut the greens, bring them in. It's that versus sitting in a room while my dad negotiates these $1 million contracts. I got to see so much.
And for context, your dad is a lawyer.
He's
an entertainment and sports.
He's a sports agent. Yeah, so he's a lawyer, sports agent.
Wow.
So he happened into that roundabout. I mean, he's always been very, very good at what he does. He's a very impressive guy. I hope he never hears me say that about him in public.
Do you want us to cut that out?
Cut it. You don't need no help. You don't need no help. He's super impressive. You know, he's just remarkable. My grandma used to say, your dad's gift is that your dad is your dad. Like, he's got an extraordinary mind. And he does. So I got to watch him go to law school. I remember saying I'd never go to law school because I went to law school with him. I sat in the room with him and I'd be like, tort, that's a weird word. You know, this is awful. I'd never do this. And now Detra Hicks, Esquire, right? So that didn't happen like I thought it would. But I got to go to school with him. I got to watch him go from being, you know, a very, very good litigator to a sports agent, to having a sports and entertainment boutique practice, you know, to just being the guy that people call for things. You know, he's that guy. God, I hate saying that in public. So I got to watch him do that and I got to learn that. Meanwhile, the rest of the family's back in La Isla, you know? And I'm doing everything I can to get back to where they are and loving every second of it, you know?
And I would say that, just for context, I think a lot of people starting out don't realize how immensely valuable it is as someone who is an aspiring TV writer to have another profession that you can refer to in your work.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you were a doctor and then decided to become a writer, you're immediately more valuable than if you didn't have that medical background, or a lawyer, or, you know, whatever. Usually for procedurals, right? It's like the holy grail is, have you been a cop? Have you been a doctor? Or have you been a lawyer? Because those three things are going to make it easier for you to get into a procedural room. But I think, you know, lived life experience is something that makes you a stronger writer. Like if you have another profession that you can dive into, right? Like in your work.
It changes your perspective.
Yes.
Like, and it informs your perspective. Because again, what do you contribute to a room is always the question that they really want to know. Like, what can you bring to the room? Well, I bring this experience, or I bring this perspective. And, you know, my perspective is full of a lot of really interesting things. I don't know if they're valuable to a room. I think they are. Well, who knows? But the thing that got me the job on Sacrifice was that I was a lawyer, a sports and entertainment lawyer.
Our protagonist was a sports and entertainment lawyer.
So I mentioned that in that meeting that day when my friend Rachel was like, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And I did. And I said that. And that's how it moved forward for me, is that other career, to your point. You know, that thing that I keep running away from is what got me the job that I always wanted anyway. I guess all of it comes back to everything informs where you want to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It makes me feel about that. Makes me think about what's that saying, what's for you won't miss you.
Yes.
It feels like all of that, like these can feel like little things. We're not, you said you keep running away from it, but it's helping you get where you want to go. 100%. So it's like just trusting. That's something I've been trying to think a lot more about and give into, is just like, what is my life telling me? How can I let what my life I'm already living, how does that inform where I'm going and what I'm trying to do and achieve, and how much can I just listen and pay attention and see what I'm already actually in the midst of doing and presently living?
Yeah.
And how does that inform what's next?
Yes.
And have fun while you're doing it, right? It's like, don't be so set on the end goal. Like, enjoy the journey, like enjoy the ups and downs, like write about them, like feel everything.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. I feel like it's really like a journey, right? Like,
it's totally a journey.
And it's okay to feel like everything, right? It's like, you know, earlier we were talking to somebody else about just this idea of like, you need to go ahead and go through the roller coaster of emotions, right? If you're feeling shitty, allow yourself to feel it. If you're, you know, don't have this pressure to be a robot, right? Like we're not robots at a typewriter, like always cranking out stuff.
Right.
Like we need to go live it and then process it and then come back with that informed opinion, you know?
You have to live. You have to go out into the world. You have to see things. So I was working on a play and I had a draft. It was fine. I was like, it's okay. We were ready to start auditioning people. My best friend, who was my producer and partner, she was like, yo, we need to get this done. I'm like, you can look at it. It's fine. I'm not excited about it. So there's something missing. Had to go on vacation with my mom. Ugh, it was awful. It was wonderful. It was the best vacation. We went to Hawaii. You know, I started life in Hawaii, so we tried to go back like every 2 years for a while because it was
That's
home.
great.
So we were there. My mom's a social butterfly. She is social in a way I never will be. And anytime my mom goes anyplace, she leaves with a friend. Every time. And she likes she vacations with excursions and zip lining. She's out in the streets, okay? I want to be on the beach. She wants to hit the trees. So we're on this boat and we're hanging out and we're talking to people, and that was cool. We get back on the bus and there are these people behind us and my mom's just chatting it up. And I'm sitting there, I'm not paying any attention. I don't want to talk to strangers. And so she's talking to these people and I'm listening to them talk. Where are you from? Oh, our grandson, he was in Georgia once. And they say where he was at. And I was like, oh, he was in training camp. And they say he was in the military. I'm just listening. And all of a sudden, I felt the energy shift behind me. I was like, oh, he's not alive anymore.
Oh.
And they didn't say anything, but I could just feel the energy shift from the man. And so he got up and excused himself. And I looked, and that's the first time I actually looked back, was when he got up to leave. And he left and his wife dropped her head and she looked at my mom. She said, I'm so sorry. That was so rude. I'm so sorry. My mom said, no, it's fine. And she said, it's just when we start talking about my grandson, he's not very comfortable with it. And I thought, oh God, he did die. And I thought, oof, and it was violent. And that's all I thought. She said it in passing that something happened to him. And later on, my mom and her were talking and she said that after he had gone to war, he came back and he wasn't well.
Oh no.
And it was just too much.
Oh.
And so Grandpa was having a very hard time with that. And just the way that we talked with these people and connected with them, all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's the thing. That man's grief is the thing. That man getting up and leaving because he could not stand the thought of talking about his grandson not being here anymore, what was and what now is, that is my thing. That changes the whole story.
Wow.
I get back, I put it all down, I send it to my friend, and she was like, well, okay, so I just cried. And I was like, did you? She said, yeah. How did you get this? I was like, this poor man on the bus.
Wow.
This poor, poor family on the bus. I wish, like anything, I could talk to those people and just be like, your grief, your love for that boy, it informed so much of what went on the page. And when we put the play up, this girl walked up to me with her sleeves like this. And I was like, what's wrong? She was like, I've come twice now. And she walked me through how this play connected her to where she was at at that point because of somebody who had committed suicide and how it spoke to her. And I was like, oh God, those people, they helped me help these people by
telling their story.
Talking to me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen if my mama is not sitting there chatting away and we're not out in the world. If I'm just sitting in front of the computer typing, I don't get that. I don't get to see somebody else's experience and condition and feel it so deeply that I feel compelled to tell the story. Like, you have to be out. You have to live it. You have to see it. And you have to be aware of how other people are living it, you know, because you only have so many feelings. But what other people are feeling, that's where you get like, oh, okay, that gives me more room. So.
I love that. Gosh, that's such a lovely note to end on.
Yeah, it really is.
Is there anything else that you want to address, that any last parting words you want to leave us with?
No, I'm just so glad that I got to do this with you guys. And I mean, anybody who sees it, who thinks it helps, that's good, I guess.
I'm so glad you came. We're so happy we had you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Detra. Like, one of the reasons we do this is to get to know our friends and fellow creatives better. And, you know, I've known you for years at this point, and I had no idea, like, a lot of these stories I had never heard before. So I'm so grateful you got to share them.
Thank you for having me a lot. I really, truly appreciate it. I remember thinking, I don't know if I have anything to say.
Oh my God, you
have so much to say.
But I feel like we had a good conversation. So
we had a great conversation.
I hope you had a good time.
I did. I really did. This was, thank you. Just thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Where can we find you on social media if you're on social media? If you're not on social media, totally fine.
I got off.
Instagram, no.
No, well, I do have an Instagram, Scribbler Hicks, at Scribbler Hicks. Great. But that's it right now.
Awesome.
Yay.
We'll put it in the comments.
Okay.
We'll put it in the comments. Yeah. And for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us. Please hit subscribe. Whatever the link, the button below, and whatever we're on, whatever platform you're on, we love having you.
Thank you so much. It helps us so much if you follow us. Appreciate it. See you on the next one, guys.